All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Hard to believe that's 334 times I've done that, huh?
Well, sometimes you say something else, but it's that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. That always worries me. Like, wait a minute, why did he change? I better really sit down. I'm already sitting down. I want to sit down from there. Like, what's up next? Oh boy. Hang on, folks.
Episode number 334 is today. Its title is How Does Today's Inflation Affect Creative Real Estate Deal Victory?
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I just watched the news this morning. I'm not even going to say what happened. It was on the news today. Like, here we go again. Keep my mouth shut. Go ahead.
Here's the description. Since COVID-19, we have heard about broken or clogged supply chains, lack of raw materials, worker shortages, rising oil and gas prices, a war with Russia and Ukraine, increases with grocery costs, car costs, even a shortage of diapers, Peter.
Hey, that doesn't bother me right now.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why. Today, today in this podcast, we are going to talk about how inflation works and how it has impacted the housing market along with creative real estate. Plus, we will chat a lot about whether you should buy or you should wait. Then we will discuss how all of this will collide with rentals or apartments. As creative real estate investors, we will need to have a good predict on how inflation impacts the market, buying or selling. As with any big financial decision, it's how important to keep your guard up for any and all economic risk. However, smart planning, like in this podcast, will keep you secure against any major risk or economic fallout.
Mm-hmm.
If you just follow along, you will soon see how plain and simple it can be. Plus, we will reveal the best investments to seek during these turbulent times and how they work for you, not against you.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I learned in real estate is that real estate isn't real estate. There's different types of real estate. And I had a garden years ago when I bought my house. I was going to go out and plant all the seeds all at once. They're different. Some like it cold, some like it warm. So you really have to get into the specifics of anything you're doing, not the generalities like houses. That's way too general. So I have an idea where you're headed, but I'm eager to hear it because it's important that in any time you figure out the right thing to do or not to do. It's not don't do anything, right? I mean, isn't it true that more millionaires are made in times of depression and all that because they know what to do?
Chaos, times of chaos.
Yeah. Gee, they say the word, but it's true. So go right ahead, Mr. Hawthorne.
All right, so before we get started, let's do some of our housekeeping tasks. So there is a link in the description that will help you with today's podcast. Sometimes I do some crazy things in there. Sometimes I don't. So you should go make sure you check the link in the description. Also, wherever you're watching us or listening to us, you should subscribe so you know when we're like on the air and you could tune in. We record the podcast on Thursday mornings, 9:30 a.m. If you can, which I know it's an odd time for most people to be here, but if you could be with us, we are on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on Twitter. So you can go to any one of those platforms, type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, and you will find us live. There's on each platform, you can type in comments. So you can do that, and they pop up on my screen here so we can answer your questions about the podcast. Also, I have a group called, it's a WhatsApp messenger group called Let's Talk Real Estate. If you join that group, there's a bunch of people in there that will help you with, including myself, that will help you with your questions or ideas. If you want to speak to me personally or have a question for Peter, send a support ticket in. You go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and you'll see on the top right hand side it says support, or you just go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/support. And those videos, I mean, those support tickets come right to me. Okay? So with that said, let's get started, Peter.
Here we go.
If you are versatile, there's no reason not to be in any game. If you are versatile, there is no reason not to be in any game. And of course, by versatile, I mean able to adapt or be able or be adapted to many different functions or activities. So in other words, you're changeable or competent in many things and are able to turn easily from one thing to the next.
Yeah, that's important.
Right? So adaptable is not the best word. Adaptable is the best word to describe our 7 core strategies. Right, which are well, I'm going to rattle them. It's a slot deal, which is a sandwich lease option transfer. That's like flipping lease options, if you would. So slot deal, you would have an option deal, you would have a rent to own deal, which is when you do a lease with an option with your seller, and then you sublease to your buyer and you make money. Then you would do getting the deed, which is subject to. And then we have rehab retail, which is flipping houses. And then we have wholesale, and then we have owner financing.
Yep.
So my point is, with what I'm saying here is that the markets change, and as you recently came to realize this, depending on the market is which type of a deal you want to use. Right, like you just did an option deal and realized, or tried to do an option deal and realized that it was the only way to do the deal, right?
Right. Yep. And for years you would say option, which is, there's some equity in the house, maybe 90% equity, which is pretty much what you would lose when you sell it with a realtor with all the closing costs. So we could do that and keep that money ourselves, kind of, but you have to catch at the right time of the market. You have to buy at the right price. You can't way overspend. So
right. So it's not 85 or 90%. It's not 85 or 90% equity. It's 85 to 90% loan to value ratio. It's 10 to 15% equity.
Yeah, I said it backwards. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah, I did it backwards. Yay.
I do shit like that all the time, and you correct me. So I just want to make sure we don't confuse anybody.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, but in the right market, that's great. In the wrong market, no can do.
Right. So many listeners may not know this, but the 2009 era was catastrophic.
Yeah.
I mean, I was swinging hard back then, right? And much worse than today's economy. Although I'm not sure which is worse. So let's talk about that for a second, because here's why.
This one isn't over yet. We're still going.
Yeah.
Let's see where we wind up.
Here's why. In 2009, credit lines were massively reduced. Right? Mortgage commitments were reneged on, and in about 30 days, the whole market was on its head. I mean, it was quick.
Right.
Right. And when I say 30 days, it might have been 90 days, but it was that quick.
Well,
right?
It was a direct real estate problem. Like sometimes you have economic crashes because of the stock market or some tech sector or something. This one was pretty much right on the real estate bullseye, wasn't it?
Yeah. So basically what happened was, and I don't want to get into this whole thing, but what happened was, when if you read the book A Creature from Jekyll Island, it explains the monetary system. And it started back in the day, way hundreds of years ago. It started, And what happened was is there was a blacksmith that had a safe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the safe is where people brought their valuables.
Yep.
So they would bring their valuables and put it in the safe because the blacksmith had the safe. Right?
You
So
know,
what
gold,
was
jewelry, real solid stuff.
whatever it was, right? So what happened was was noted after a while that only about 10% of the people came and added or removed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that became the banking industry. So the bank is not allowed to lend more than 90% of their money.
Mm-hmm.
So say they have $100 million, they're only allowed to lend 90 million. They need 10 million at 10% reserve
Mm-hmm.
for the deposits and the withdrawals.
Yep.
Because only about 10% of the people come into the bank and want their money in any given day.
That makes sense.
Okay. So what happened was in 2009, of course, a lot of us don't realize it, but Switzerland has a lot to do with our money. So what happens is Switzerland has this dirty rotten trick where they have trillions of dollars they lend us, and they lend it to us based on us changing laws. So we'll lend you this money if you change these laws. And most people don't know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was they tend to want these crises so they can lend us money. So what they did is because they had the most amount of money in the world, they kind of control the credit of the world. So what they did is they tightened up that 10%. They said that 10%, it had gone down to 8% or 7.5% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did is they pulled in all the credit lines. So if you had a credit line for 10 grand, now all of a sudden it was for only 5 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were trying to adjust for that 10% that was off. It was not,
Yeah.
it was only 7% or 8%, or I don't know what the number was, but it was off. In other words, we were heading for a depression. So they say, right? Because that's what a depression is not enough people rushing to the bank trying to get their money. Right. So that's what happened. So what happened was credit lines shrunk.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, suppose you have a mortgage company, right? I mean, you have a bank that's lending money. Well, the money comes from the government most of the time, right? So they shrunk all the credit lines. So all the commitments they had out there were shut off because they couldn't get the money. The credit lines were shrunk.
Mm-hmm.
Credit cards were shrunk. Everything was shrunk. I mean, it wasn't, if you had cash in the bank, you were good. But if you were using credit lines like everybody else does, credit cards, credit lines, home equity lines, HELOCs, all that kind of stuff, it all shrunk. So that's what happened. So it was quick, right? So with huge companies, and then so in 2009, because of that, huge companies went belly up, right? Like General Motors and Ford and all these big, these, what was the stock market guys? I forgot the big stock market. Lehman and whatever they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all these guys are going down, and now the government has to bail them out, or we have a crash, we have a depression, like in 1930.
Yep.
Right. So
that's what they said.
Yeah.
I figured, why don't you just give all the money to us instead of the bank? We'd be fine then. Just give us the money. They always bail out the banks. Like, give it to me and Bill and you listeners. We'll take it.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I'm spending too much time on this, but the interesting thing is that we're no longer on the gold standard with our money, which means gold doesn't back our money. So what backs our money is actually debt. Because here's what happens is when the government prints money, which, by the way, the United States government is not allowed to print money. The Constitution says we can only have metal money. Mm-hmm. So that's what this creature from Jekyll Island is you realize it's all a private entity. It's not the government, right?
Yeah.
So, the Federal Reserve is actually privately owned, and they print the money and they write a note. If you look on your money, on your dollars and tens and fives and 20s and hundreds, it says it's a note, right? So it's an IOU. The government sends an IOU. Well, here's what happens is when they print all that money, they have to circulate it, right? So the way they circulate it is they send it to the government, and they have things like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and the college loans. That's where all the money comes from, because they put it in those accounts and they lend it, right? So
then it gets into circulation.
So it gets into circulation, right? So the money's backed by debt. So the only way they could sell this on Wall Street was to insure the debt, because the Wall Street guys are not going to buy debt unless it's performing correctly. So what they did is they created So what they did is they created this company called AMG Insurance, and they insured the T-bills, which are the mortgages. So in 2009, a lot of that money went into AMG, because what was happening was they went to AMG to get the insurance because the debt wasn't good, and AMG didn't have the money. So a lot of that money went there. So what happened is the government started bailing out all these big companies with printed money, which just kind of made it worse. But in today's turmoil, it's a much slower demise. Right, and it's like cancer, starting from the inside, quiet and deadly, often unknown until it is too late. Right, and just so I'm clear, every one of these downturns are made by greedy, evil people. This is not like it just happened and we didn't know it was going to happen. These are proactive, greedy, evil people. Like the Soroses of the world, that believe that there's too much population and there's not enough resources, so they're trying to control that, right? Because they feel like they're higher than we are on the food chain. They feel like they're better humans than we are, because they have so much money, right?
Yeah, to me, it turns out that they do the solutions backwards. Instead of working on improving resources, finding more, make it more economical, being smarter about it. The hard work, they take the easy way out. Shoot a couple people, get rid of some people. It's just the cowardly way out, like inflation. I'm not going to say it yet. I'm going to let you do your thing, but we know what the formula is, and I'll let you get to it. But I was thinking they raised the interest rate this morning while we're doing this podcast. I just heard it this morning, another 0.5%. Yeah. That's the way they're going to fix it. I think there's a better way to do it.
They're trying to slow the economy down by raising interest rates, which is backwards.
Right.
So the only way to destroy these villains that I'm talking about, like a wooden stake in the heart of a vampire, is to flourish and prosper. Right? They don't know how to deal with that, and they burn to dust when it happens. When we flourish and prosper against their evil intentions, they don't know what to do. So this podcast is going to help you flourish and prosper using creative real estate as your main wealth tool. So first, let's talk about what inflation is and why it happens, which is what you were just talking about. Unlike what some economists say or financial planners believe, it is real simple. And it's kind of funny because I was doing research for this podcast, and the other day I'm doing a big webinar this weekend. And I was looking for a definition of scarcity.
Oh.
Now, I have a definition. I was looking for a graphic of one. And it was interesting to me how many definitions are out there that are just, I don't even know how they call them definitions. They weren't even, it was so far off what the word really meant. It was bizarre to me. So I feel like that's the same way with inflation. There's a lot of different ideas and PhDs that write these little memes, and it's kind of funny. So here it is. Unlike what most economists and financial planners believe, it's just real simple. It's too much money, not enough products. That's inflation. So, for example, it's too much money, not enough products. That's what happened in Germany a bunch of years ago. You had to bring a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread.
I've seen that photo.
That was in the 40s and the 50s, right?
I've seen the video.
So just as an example, because we talk about real estate, an example in real estate is you have one house for sale and 20 buyers that have cash. So of course the price goes up. Right? Now just the opposite, deflation is too many products, not enough money.
Yep.
Right? So to reverse the example I just gave you, it's 20 houses for sale and only one buyer.
Yep.
Of course, we also call this a seller's market or a buyer's market. Right? So when we have one house and 20 buyers, that's a seller's market because the seller says, no, I'm not going to do this, because they know if they refuse the offer, they've got 19 more behind it.
Yep. They if it's seller's market, they're in the driver's seat.
And then when it's the other way around, when you have 20 houses for sale and only one buyer, then it's a buyer's market, because then the buyer could be in the driver's seat, as you say, and they could pick and choose. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now watch this. 2020 comes along with this virus, this COVID virus thing, that makes the whole world stay at home.
Yep.
Right? No production. We stopped working. We shut the country off for a year. Right? No new cars made, no furniture built, houses stopped getting built, diapers and formula aren't made. Right? But the only thing that happened was essential stuff, which was food and medical.
Yeah.
Other than that, there was no production. Right? So everyone's on a Zoom call talking about production, but it isn't happening. They're just talking about it. Right? Which, by the way, probably the worst ramification of COVID, in my personal opinion, and it's just an opinion. At this point, it's an unsolicited opinion, because I'm going to tell you without you asking me my opinion.
Hey,
right?
It's your podcast, Mr. Hawthorne.
Yeah, exactly.
Go
So,
ahead.
so my unsolicited opinion is the worst thing that happened from COVID is we all did Zoom calls for a year or two. We didn't go in the office for 2 years almost. And now we're having trouble coming out of that, and which is the shortage. We don't have a shortage of work labor. What's happening is the workforce wants to stay home and do Zoom calls. I mean, it's like we went back 200 years in our system. Like everybody had a farm, they kept to themselves. They planted their food. They slaughtered their chickens and they lived.
Yep.
And we're trying to do that now. We're trying to stay at home in our comfort zone, not have to drive in the snow or in the rain or be in traffic or whatever, and deal with other human beings, physically. You didn't have, it's less confront. It's just a different world, right?
Yeah.
So everyone's at home on Zoom calls doing whatever, right?
Yep.
So can you still hear me? Because my video keeps popping in and out over here.
Oh yeah, no, your audio is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I see you too. It's not happening on my end. I mean, we can see you.
Good.
Hope everybody else can.
All right. So what happens next is the government decides to start paying people while they're at home on these Zoom meetings.
Perfect. You get to stay home and make money. Perfect world.
Right. And the way the government gets all of the money to pay us is to print it. Right.
I think they found an easier way. Don't they just type it into the keyboard and push an enter button?
Yeah. In fact, most don't know this, but it's our taxes. It's not our taxes. So most people think we pay our taxes and the government spends that money to run the government and pay the bills and fix roads. And, they think that the taxes cover it. Well, I promise you that is 100% wrong. It's the biggest scam on planet Earth. If you go watch The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is a documentary, you can go watch it. It's about a 45-minute YouTube video, or read the book. The book is about 500 pages, right? So, Johnny's here. John, you're right. It is fine. Sounds fine, he said. So, thank you. So what happens is if you go read the book, you'll realize how all this works, because he breaks down the details and he's got evidence. I mean, he's got The fact, what makes a fact is it's observable. So if you can see it, it's a fact.
Well, what if you just say it? Doesn't that make it a fact because you said it?
No.
No. Also,
What
before this whole thing, 1911 or 13, whatever that was, there was no income tax. The country ran for over 100 years without income tax at all.
Right.
People don't know that.
Right.
I remember that from school.
Well, I believe that's what caused it. That's what caused the depression was income tax.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's because it happened It happened a few years before the depression, and they killed the country, right?
Yeah.
So fact is an observable thing. An opinion is not observable. So just get that, okay? All right, so we have this perfect storm now. No production, too much money, right? Now let's get down to real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Now that inflation is double digits, what a buyer used to be able to afford for a monthly payment gets reduced. Example, they want to buy a $200,000 house and it's $1,500 a month, right?
Yep.
So to reverse that, right, is if the guy can, if the guy, I'm saying guy, if the person can afford $1,500 a month based on their income and their debt to income ratio and all that kind of stuff, it allows them to buy a $200,000 house.
Yep.
In other words, the monthly payment predicates how much they can borrow.
Of course.
How much they can borrow predicates how much they can pay.
Mm-hmm.
So when inflation comes like it is right now, that $1,500 is no longer $1,500 because now they're paying more money for everything else.
Yeah.
Right? Including their credit card debt is up. I mean, I'm telling you, my credit card debt is way up. I'm leveraging my credit card debt, and I've not had my credit card debt so high in years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I know if I'm like that, everybody else is like that. I mean, it's just I'm a regular American, right? So now what happens is instead of being able to afford $1,500 a month, you can only afford $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
For a payment, which means now instead of being qualified for $200,000, you're probably qualified for $175,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here's what happens: you now can only offer $175,000 for that $200,000 house. Okay. Now
that's right.
I'm going to put my notes down for a second and try not to go on a rant here because I want you to get what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's something that I noticed in my 30 years in real estate, Peter.
Yeah.
This you should write down. This should be memorable to you. It's my own observation, and you could go do your own fact checking on me if you want, but listen to what I'm telling you. The down markets are always way longer than the up markets. So if you have 2 years like we just had of an up market, it's probably going to be 6, 8, 10 years of a down market. They are always way longer. My prediction, and I have no fact on this, this is just my opinion, but my prediction is that the down markets are about 3 times longer than the up markets. Mm-hmm. So if it's 2 years is good, we're going to have 6 years of down.
I never thought about that because there haven't been as many markets as you have time-wise. It just makes sense. I mean, when something's an up market, isn't it always artificial?
Right.
It's not like naturally, we're just working so hard, look all the way out. It's not. It's some artificial thing that happened. And then when it crashes, we're not that smart to get out of it. And it takes us a while to get out of it because we did something stupid to get into it. We're not that smart to get out of it. And it takes a while. I mean, that's just my opinion. But if you see this over years, as a fact.
So in my business, I know this factually. I can give you incident after incident because I've been self-employed for almost 40 years, 35 years.
Yep.
I know this factually. Statistics do not go down. They're held down.
Yeah.
They're held down. Statistics do not go down. It's not like, so it's like we were making $1,000 a week, $1,000 a week, $1,000 a week, all of a sudden we went down to $400 a week.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't just go down. It was forced down. Somebody did something to cause that statistic to go from $1,000 down to 400. Now,
Yep.
it could be a simple mistake. It could be somebody intentionally did it. It could be, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you have 5 employees,
Mm-hmm.
one of those employees is a trouble source.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
1 out of 5 is a trouble source. 20% of everybody around you, 20% of the people in this population are a trouble source. They're not in present time. They're ill. They're not paying attention. They don't duplicate well. They don't have enough life to run themselves. They need other people to help them. Those 20% are dangerous people. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that derogatorily. I don't mean that like you just need to know they're there. And that
Mm-hmm.
and those people that make those mistakes, that they make mistakes, they're ill, they're not in present time. They're not there with you right now. They're not alive. They're partially dead. They're like not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? They're not adding to life. They're taking away from life, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that those people, whether it's a mistake, it's a car accident, it's the I don't know what it could be, anything. It caused the statistics to go down. So statistics don't go down; they're pushed down or held down. So if our statistics,
want to hear a good example?
Hang on. So if our statistics in the United States are down, it's not because the economy is just willy-nilly running without a driver or an author.
Mm.
No, somebody's driving the economy, somebody's pushing it down, somebody's picking it up. End of story. So go ahead.
No, this is Sunday. I was with a friend of mine who's a doctor, and he's a chiropractor. So he goes to his dentist and gets his teeth cleaned 4 times a year because he has a little gum trouble. And he says they got a new hygienist, and ever since working with that person, he's in bigger trouble than before, and it's worse. And he goes to the office, he looks around, the staff don't look as happy as before. The place looks more run down, and you can see it going to hell. So that's like one person. And he said he won't work with that person anymore. And if he can't get someone else, he's going to go somewhere else. So one person, and it's just a hygienist. She's not an evil person, but she's some kind of a mess, or whoever it is. And it's just ruining that part of the business that's like spreading. And he just
I'll tell you
days ago.
Those people are covert. You can't see them. They're the people that tell you to your face they're helping you and that you need them the most. And those are the ones that are going to stab you in the back first.
Mm-hmm.
Passive aggressive, we call that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So here's the last thing I want to say on that. Those people, and it took me a long time to figure this out, do one thing to an organization. And the only way you can find it is with Dateline statistics. You have to go back through your records and see when it started and who you hired.
Yep.
It's the only way to find them because they're so covert. They're chameleons. If you say you like purple, they love purple. If you like steak, they absolutely love steak. If you hate spaghetti, they hate spaghetti too. They're chameleons. They tell you whatever you want to hear, so you'll be their friend. And they usually attack productive people.
Oh yeah, they'll do it. Well, at that level, everything's backwards. They attack the productive person, and then they encourage the unproductive and encourage them. Yeah, let's take more breaks or anything. It's just backwards.
So we're way off topic here, but anyways, here's my point: is the number one way to realize that one of these people are around is they make other people disinterested. So if you have a lot of people that are disinterested in doing, in flying a kite, because you fly kites every Saturday, and all of a sudden everybody's disinterested and don't want to fly a kite anymore, one of those people are around.
Wow.
Okay, so back to so now we have this inflation causing people to pay less money. Now, here's the rant that I didn't go on. Now, pay attention to me.
Mm-hmm.
Good markets, bad markets. there's a transition between a good market and a bad market. And there's a transition between a bad market and a good market. You talked about this many podcasts ago. If you could predict that, we'd be very wealthy. Well, you can. And here's how, right? You can do it with days on market.
Yep.
So days on market, I'm off script here, but days on market, if you have a house, you put it on the market, or a piece of real estate, you put it on the market, within 30 days, you get a bunch of offers and you're closing, that's the hot market.
Yep.
If you put a piece of real estate on the market and it takes 90 days to get offers and get it sold, that's a cold market. A perfect market is about 45 days to 60 days, because what happens is the seller puts the house on the market. We know this because we talk to a lot of for sale by owners, and they have big expectations in the beginning. And I promise you, every seller believes their house is the best one on the market, right? Well, John down the street sold his house, but my house has this, his didn't. You hear that a lot, right? So what happens is they need to humble, and in about 45 days is when the seller starts to humble. That's a perfect time. So the 45-day to the 60-day mark is when you should be talking to sellers about creative real estate. That's when they humble. Okay. So here's my point: is right now, and I'm talking about December of 2022, we are smack dab in the middle of people being those 45 days, because we had this hot market that you put a house on the market for 200 and you get off for 250,000, and they close in 3 seconds because they have the cash.
Yep.
Right. So what happens is the market, meaning the sellers, are always 6 months behind. And the reason why they're always 6 months behind is because they won't listen to people like you and I. They won't listen to people that are trying to buy their house because they think we're just trying to steal it from them. So they have to place it on the market and wait the 6 months to make sure that we're telling the truth. Right? So there's always a 6 month lag. It's 4 to 6 months, but it's about 6 month lag. So we are at the end of that period now, because it started in July of 2022. To my perspective, people started to humble.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I'm noticing that too. Prices, people I'm talking to, how much they're asking, it's overpriced, and they're sitting. I'm seeing exactly that.
Right. So what's happening is as we go into the spring market, now we'll get 2023, we'll get a little bit of a boost because it's a spring market. But the bottom line is that the market is humbled right now. Interest rates are going up. 48%. The mortgage company in October 2022, the mortgage industry reported that their applications were down 48%. Application submittals were down 48%. They're laying people off.
Wow.
Okay. So anyways, so here's the magic. The seller days on the market increases from 20 to 45 to 90. So the way you can gauge what market you're in is by days on market, which, by the way, you could type into Google what's the average days on market in, and you could cuck city, whatever that means, right? Or you could actually, if you know a realtor, ask a realtor to go on the MLS and just give you the average days on market in your area.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like takes 2 seconds. They monitor all the time.
It's also listed on each house. If you're seeing something for sale, it's someplace in the description says how many days on market as you look at each of them. So
you can go on Zillow, and it says on Zillow, it says how many days it's been on Zillow. And that's another good way to watch it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you
So
see it as you go.
after being around so many sellers, and it's thousands for me, 4, 5, 6,000, I know they start to humble, like I said, around 45 days. What I just told you about days on the market is well worth your time today, because that can gauge whether you should be in or out. Right? So little things, and I know I keep diverting, but little things like the other day I was coaching a client, and normally the monthly payment on the house, it was a $400,000 house, and the payment is like he wanted $2,300. Normally that wouldn't bother me, but I'm like, with the economy coming the way it is, I don't think you should take that house, take the deed, subject to, take the deed in your name. You should just do a lease option, because I don't know if 2,300 is going to be a good number in a year from now. You might struggle with that property. So it changes your mindset, right? Which, by the way, we're going to cover this next podcast. Well, anyways, I'll leave it there. How do you know when to buy and when not to buy? We're going to cover that next podcast. Okay. So here's the most important fact about risk or deflating prices. First, if you subscribe to my beliefs, I call Bill's Planet, you should always have equity in any property the day you buy it. Unless, of course, it's a lease option transfer, the slot deal, then you don't have equity. You create your own equity, but you're in and out within 30 days, and you're not obligated to buy. An option agreement means that you have the right to buy, but you're not obligated to buy.
Right.
So you could put up $100, $10, $1, any paper denomination. I use 100, and that's all that's at risk is the $100. Right. So now watch this. So if you subscribe to my beliefs, you should always have equity in a property the day you buy it. Now, note, because I'm fickle with words, note, I said buy. That means you get a deed in your name. I said buy. I did not say control. Like the slot deal, the option deal, rent-to-own deals, right? Those you have very little risk because you can walk away easily. You'll piss off a seller, but there's no legal ramification. Right? So if you notice in my 7 deal structures, right? I'm going to rattle them off again, going from top to bottom, and they're strategically placed as a hierarchy, right? So a slot deal is at the top, right? An option deal is next, below it. Below that is a rent to own. Below that is subject to getting the deed. Below that is rehab retail. Yeah. Below that is wholesale. Below that is owner financing. Those are strategically placed that way based on the amount of loan to value they have and how much equity they have. So in other words, the owner finance has the most amount of equity, and then it goes up from there. And the slot deal has no equity. You make your equity as your profit. Like, in other words, you buy for 190 and sell for 195 and get a $5,000 deposit. There is no equity. You're inflating the price to get your fee, and your buyer will be willing to do that. Okay? So now watch this. So if you start with slot deal, option deal, rent to own, all 3 of those strategies do not include getting the deed. You don't start to get the deed until the subject to deal. Okay. Now I'm going to just rattle off numbers because I had them, and you should write these down if you're confused, or go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and watch the video. So a slot deal has no equity. Very little equity. An option deal has 10% equity. A lease option deal has 15% worth of equity. Then from there we go into the getting the deed or subject to, and that has 20% worth of equity. So I want you to realize that this was not willy-nilly when I designed this. It's what we call extrapolation. Like it's like what happened. You're making a decision about the future based on what happened in the past. That's extrapolation, right? So I did a bunch of deals back in the day, and I started to ask myself, what are the deals that I make the most amount of money on, right? And I started looking at. So when I designed this 7 core strategies, I didn't make the strategies. I just put them in order and assigned them to the equity. That's what my claim to fame is, right? So when I designed them, it was intentional. Okay, so I strongly suggest, to be safe, you have at least 20% worth of equity in these deals. And here's the reason why. This is how you stay good in a turbulent market like now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here's why. In most markets, not all, because usually Las Vegas and Florida are the exceptions, because they go crazy high, crazy low. Not always, but they're usually the ones. But the rest of the country, you'll notice when the economy swings, it's not more than 20%. If you notice, it swings low 20%, it swings high 20%. So if you have a house that's worth $200,000, it could swing down to 175 or 180, which is like 20%, or it could go up to 225, 220, or 225. Right now, this last market is going to hurt because here's what's going to happen: it went up more than 20%.
It was a lot. It was surprising what happened. Like, oh boy, some pretty lousy houses that needed renovation sold for what we would sell a house renovated. It was weird.
I'm going to come back to that in a minute, right? So if you stick to the 20% equity rule, if you're going to take a deed, if you're going to own it, because if your name is on the deed, then you're liable for everything, right? So if you are paying 80% of the property and the market crashes 20%, then really what did you lose? Your profit? As long as you keep renting, it'll come back. And by the way, it's an average of 5 years. Now pay attention, connect that dot to what I said earlier, because I told you it's usually 3 times the up years go the down years. So if we had 2 good years, right, we're going to have 6 bad years, right? And I just said to you, it's usually 5 years. The cycles are usually 5 years up and down.
Yep.
Right? So they're kind of connected. So even better than that, if you do as I do and sell on a rent to own, that gives you the money to pay the bills and the profit monthly. This brings me to rental income.
Right.
Okay. So rental income is a fluctuation on cash flow. So here's what happens. And I can't get this stressed enough. And I'm actually in other coaching groups, and I have other guys that actually try to argue with me about this, and there is no argument in my world. It's just a stake in the ground. This is no different than Neil Armstrong putting an American flag on the moon. It just is. You don't change it, right? My philosophy is not to charge rent. So many of my students go to Rentometer, and they're like, they want to charge rent, right? I don't do that. What I do is I figure out how much the mortgage is going to be for my buyer. So if they're buying a $200,000 house, now I do it a little bit weird because I don't deduct the deposit. So if I sell for 200 and they give me 10 grand down, I don't do a mortgage for 190. I do it for 200 because that money isn't mine until they buy.
But doesn't that also help have the person buying paying a little bit extra? So when he gets his mortgage, he gets to pay a little bit less as an incentive.
Right.
Why would he bother? So I think you built in an incentive that way. It's not bad.
That's right. So what I do is I figure out what the mortgage would be. Now, here's the reason why I do that, right? If I'm charging $1,500 a month for rent because Rentometer says it's $1,500 or Rentometer says it's $1,400 and I feel like I'm pushing it, that's good if I plan on that tenant buyer staying a year or 2 or 10 years, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I don't do that because when you rent, you get 1 month security deposit, maybe 2 months security deposit. And you have to put that in the bank and you have to pay interest on it and give it back to them if they don't do damage. When we sell on rent to own, they're putting the money towards an option consideration deposit, which is non-refundable. So that it's 5% of the price of the house usually. So in my case, on a $200,000 house, they're giving me 10 grand.
Yep.
So that automatically puts them into a different class of people. Now they're not renters, they're owners. I'm giving them a temporary mortgage until they can qualify for a new mortgage.
Yep.
What I don't want to have happen is I don't want to have the buyer paying less for a rent than what the mortgage would be, because then they would never go get a mortgage. So if I'm charging them $1,500 and the mortgage is going to be $1,800, why would they want to go get a mortgage and raise their fee $300 a month? I'd rather be at $2,000 and know that they're going to get a $200 discount when they go get a mortgage, and it keeps them motivated.
Yep.
So it's just a philosophy, but it works, and it's done very well by me. So I don't use rent. So the whole rental thing. Now, if you want to be in the apartment building complex, then you should listen to Grant Cardone, because he's 100% correct. He says that recession-proof real estate, rental real estate, needs to be between $800 and $1,200 a month per door to rent. And he's 100% correct, because if you could rent between $800 and $1,200 a month, everybody has $800 to $1,200 a month. I know, because when we're selling houses, $400,000 house, they always want to pay $1,200.
Is that changed any lately?
No, it's the
changed?
craziest thing in the world.
Hasn't. I would think it would come up a little bit, because I just know some of the rents that people are paying. It's $1,500 is more normal nowadays.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
Well, I mean, yeah, but there's a certain amount that you're safe at. That's the point. I mean, in 50 years, it won't be $1,200 at some point, but there's a safe amount that you can rent at, and that's rental.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Full.
So we have that concept now. So we want to buy at 20% equity or more, right? So if we could do 30%, even better. By the way, the easiest way in the world to buy a property at 80% equity is to find out how much they owe. So Peter, how much do you owe on the house?
I owe $150.
Good. Would you be willing to sell it for what you owe on
it? Yeah, I guess.
Or you could say no. So would you be willing to sell for what you owe on it?
No, I have more equity in it than that. No.
Okay. How much did you want to walk away?
I think after closing and everything in my pocket, $15,000. So
if I give you $5,000, would that work? Okay,
10?
so that's it. So my point is you're not talking the number. What you're negotiating is how much money he's going to get in his pocket.
Yep.
Right? You're not negotiating from $200,000 down to $165,000. No, you're negotiating. So my point is the easiest way in the world to ask to get these deals is to ask, would you be willing to pay? Would you be willing to sell the house for what you owe on it? And you will be surprised at how many people say yes.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Or they say no. What do you mean? Well, I need moving money. Well, will $2,500 work? As far as I'm concerned, anything below $5,000 or below, you're paying for what they owe, right? Because I mean, it's just that's the way it is. So you'd be surprised on how many of those deals you'll get. And the more, which is the reason the first part of the contract, the first part of the podcast is in play, is the more days on market, the more people that will say yes. Will you sell it for what you owe on it? Yeah. That's the magic right there. So listen to what I'm telling you, because this is like this is like the perfect storm right now. It will not last for long, months. That's it. It will not last for years. It will be months. That's it. Not years. Okay, so you got to be doing this now. Okay, so so now here's what happens. If you're going to acquire properties and you want to build wealth, I'm talking about retire early money. I strongly suggest now the perfect deal for you right now is a subject to deal taking over the mortgages. That's because for probably 9 or 10 years, interest rates have been between 3 and 4%. So there are a lot of mortgages that are between 3 and 4%.
Yep.
A lot of mortgages. But now you just said the interest rate went up this morning, so that means we're probably at 7% now, right? They're heading for double digits. They're going to go to, which, by the way, I did some research on that. In the last 100 years, the last 9 or 10 years are the only time that they've been below double digit. Our interest rates are very often 8 and 10%. you look at history, we're used to paying 8 or 10% or more. So it's
on mortgages.
On mortgages.
You know, I haven't paid that much attention, but I remember in the 80s, it was 18% for a while.
Yeah.
It was like nuts.
So the study that it was a blog. The study that I was reading is that most of the time we're double digits. It's been some freak anomaly that for so many years we were down to 3 or 4%. Okay, now watch this. So mathematically, you take over a mortgage payment at 4%.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that mortgage payment is $1,250. Right? I just did this, so this is what made me do this. This is a few months ago, and I saw it by accident because I was messing around on a mortgage calculator, right?
Yeah, but you were talking about this last year. I mean, you're talking about a specific example now, but you're talking about the concept last year, and here it is, right? A year ago you were talking about this, folks. Exactly. Listen to Bill.
Yeah, well, it's not.
Well, really, well, you know, you really have. You're not the only one, but you saw this happen coming a year ago. So you sorry, I'm banging my laptop.
So the payment is $1,250 with your taxes, insurance, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
So now if you do like I say a few minutes ago, you don't predicate your monthly payment on a rent, you predicate it on a mortgage amount. Mm-hmm. You go on any mortgage calculator, like the one I use is Simple Mortgage Calculator. You just type in Simple Mortgage Calculator into Google, and it's the first one that pops up. It automatically populates the interest rate with the current interest rate. And I just did one for 6.7%. I'm sure it's 7% today, right? So that means you're buying the property at 4% interest and you're selling it at 7% interest, and you're not obligated by the banking laws of having the 3% markup on the interest, because you're not buying and selling money. You're buying and selling a house.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you were to lend money, if you were to borrow money at 4% and then sell it at 7%, the banking industry freaks out about that.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Cuts into their profit.
In this case, you're assuming cuts into their profit. In this case, you're assuming the mortgage at 4%, and you're resetting the price at the current value at 7%. So now at 17%, all of a sudden your mortgage payment is $1,800, not $1,200 or $1,300.
Yeah, and you can't help it. It's not. You said you're not doing it. The banking, when the guy goes to the bank says that's what it is. It's not like you did it. It just happens by itself.
If he went and got a mortgage, it has to be, you want to be in the current situation of what the mortgage rate would be.
Yep.
Right. Now some of the subject to houses that I have, they've been in there for 4 or 5 years, because I let them stay in there. They're going to suffer because they're not going to want to go get a mortgage because the interest rate was low when they could have got it back then. But that's a different story, right? So now watch this. Because you're getting a deed, and I could go on for another hour on this, the best deal to do is subject to in my world, because it has the most amount of benefits.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to rattle a couple of them off, right? So you should go listen to podcast 291 and 292, podcast number 291 and 292, and you will understand why I'm telling you this is the best type of transaction to do. We rattle off, I think it was 19. It was a while ago. 19 benefits of why you should buy subject to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mostly it's the taxes, and because the deed's in your name, you get the write-offs. Like, for example, you pay a mortgage to the mortgage company, right?
Sure.
One of my mortgages last year, I paid $6,600 that year on taxes. The mortgage payment, I think, was $1,600 a month.
Yeah.
Or $1,400 a month or something like that. I got $6,600 tax break because I paid in February. The bank sent me a statement saying you paid $6,600 in interest.
Yeah,
I give that to my account.
You said taxes before, but it's the interest. Yeah, you got it right. So the interest it's just a tax thing. If you pay interest, they give you a break.
So I give my attorney, I'm sorry, my accountant, this letter from the bank saying that I paid $6,600 in interest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He automatically takes that off my income. So if I was making $100,000, now it's $100,000 minus $6,600. Now it's $93,400.
Yeah, and you're not paying taxes on that $6,600.
All right. So now watch this. You're making $600 a month, or $500. Say you're making $500 a month on this property.
On the cash flow.
On the cash flow, you made $500 a month profit.
Yeah.
Well, the interest just wiped out because you got a tax deduction of $6,600, and you made $6,000. So you really got it. You really made it's
tax free cash flow.
Technically.
And this is just accounting stuff. We love going to our accountant, right?
3.64%. Remember that number. 3.64%. 3.64%.
Yeah.
That's how much you get each year for depreciation.
Right.
For 27 and a half years.
Which breaks down to 3.64% per year.
So that means you not only got the tax break on paying the interest, but you got depreciation. Right? Which is
a loss. Right? It's a loss off your income.
It's a deduction. So if you have a $200,000 house, let's do this. So to 200,000.
7,000? 7,000 something?
I was going to say.
It's like a little more than 3.5%.
4%. $7,280.
Comes off your income.
Plus you got $6,600 that we just talked about. So you got $13,880 on just two things. So you got $13,880 taxes reduction. So if you made $100,000, right? Minus 100,000. That means you're only paying taxes on $86,000. Now wait a minute. Do this times 10, times 3, times 20 houses.
Yeah. And you get a check in the mail instead of a bill in the mail.
Peter was the one that started to notice that. He's like doing his taxes, and he's like, Bill, I don't understand. The more houses I buy, the less taxes I pay. Right? Before
my wife is the bookkeeper. My wife is our bookkeeper. We go to the accountant. We sit there. I sit there, and they talk to each other. And I go, how much did I save? And they go, blah, blah. Okay, let's go home. Want to go to lunch? That's it. It's beautiful, beautiful thing. A good accountant. And I mean, these are the laws. These are the laws that give property owners some benefit. Because what if nobody owned property? What if the laws were backwards? Who would buy damn property? Where would people live? This is just designed so that the world, functions. So this is the game. Play the game. Learn the rules. Take advantage of the thing because it's hard work too. It's not like we roll out of bed in the morning, the houses fall in our lap. We got to work for this. This isn't free money. We're earning it. But this is the benefits when you do the work.
So that's why I say it's, creative real estate is beautiful. There's nothing else on planet Earth that I know of that is like this, where you work once and get paid multiple times. Okay, so we didn't even talk about if you did repairs.
Well, that's episode. We spent a couple hours on those episodes. Go listen.
So you need to go listen to 291 and 292, and you will definitely be tenacious on doing a subject to deal and making sure that you're 80%. I'm going to tell you right now, Pace Morby doesn't teach that, and he's supposed to be the subject to king. He's going to get in trouble because I did in 2009 because I didn't have the 20% worth of equity. You need leverage. You need leverage. Leverage means you owe a lot less than what it's worth. So when the market goes down, you don't lose your investment, you lose just your profit, and then you just wait. So in other words, you can still keep making your payments because what you're getting for your income way supersedes what your outgo is.
Yeah.
Because of
the profit was just on paper. The equity, it was just on paper. You're getting the cash flow every month, and you're still getting that. The rest was just paper. You didn't have a profit. It's like you said when somebody was reading the stock market. Oh, I lost $1,000 today. Why, did you sell the stock? No.
Right.
So you didn't lose anything. You said in your head.
My father-in-law,
Yeah.
Okay, good. So hopefully that helps you. That's my suggestion. So if you're to summarize, if you're nervous and you're worried, then you do a slot deal, an option deal, a rent to own, and you control the property. You don't own it. You that's 0 to 15% worth of equity. Or loan to value is 85, 0 to 85%. I mean 100% to 85%. If for some reason you want to be you want to retire early, then subject to is the way to do it. And you buy at least at 20% worth of equity, and you do the things we're talking about, and you will soon notice that after a few houses, it will be spectacular. And not enough people talk about the back end profits, the back end of subject to, because it's just, so many people are worried about how do they get their first deal. I'm telling you, it's not hard. Creative real estate isn't something you learn. It's something you do. Creative real estate is not something you learn, it's something you do. So just get on the phone, call somebody and say, would you be willing to sell for what you owe on it? And it will make a world of difference. Okay, so thank you for listening to us today. Make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're watching us or listening to us. Make sure you go leave us a review, good, bad, or indifferent. Make sure you go to the description of this podcast and click on the link, because there's something in there for you that you're going to really like. Also, make sure that you if you have any questions, you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/support, and you go to WhatsApp Messenger and look for Let's Talk Real Estate. And if you can't find it there, send me a support ticket. I'll send you a link. Okay. Next week's podcast. What do you call it next week? Next episode is 335. Is called Why We Always Make Huge Profits on Our Creative Real Estate Deals. That's my deals. Why I always make profits on creative I'm going to put it again. Why I always make huge profits on my creative real estate deals. And I'm going to take you behind the scenes, pull the curtain back, and I'm going to show you some stuff I haven't showed you before. So make sure you tune in. Okay, over and out. Have a great week. Thanks for all the support. And if you need something, just shout out and we will help. Over and out.